Дорожный набор для чего?
차 세트
Традиционно.
이시니까 이렇게 그런 명칭을 가진 그런 곰입니다.
어디 이 장군하고 저 장군하고 좀 가만히 할까? 오늘 대해서
무기인 이 곰을 이 명장군께 선물로 주도합니다.
Ну, а это...
그래서 우리 풍습에 따라서 칼을 줄 때는 일단 이게 아기를 품지 않았다는 의미에서 던을 주게 이렇게 됐어요.
지금처럼 현대적인 무장이 없을 때는 옛날 장수들이 다 이런 장군을 준비했지.
거기다 이해보다 봤다.
So the South Koreans and the Chinese cut out to a certain extent. I mean, Beijing surely won't be happy with that.
I think they're very anxious and very concerned as to what it is the Russians are offering North Korea. I think it makes them very uncomfortable when Russia is too forward-leaning on the North Korea issue because, you know, the Chinese do see this more as their sphere of influence to take the lead on, and that Russia should be supporting more of a Chinese stance. And so the idea that you know, Kim Jong-un went to Vladivostok and didn't go to Beijing first is deliberate, I'm sure, and certainly is a cause for concern in Beijing as to, you know, what is this changing dynamic.
China concerned as Kim Jong-un sidelines Beijing for Russia-a deliberate move. China is very anxious and very concerned by the historic first-ever summit between the leaders of North Korea and Russia, an expert on the Korean Peninsula has warned. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un made a deliberate move to snub China, its most important trading partner, by heading directly to Russia and refraining from a stopover in Beijing first, according to Jenny Town, a fellow at the Stimson Center. Speaking on BBC Radio 4's World Tonight, Town said, "I think they are very anxious and very concerned as to what it is the Russians are offering North Korea. I think it makes them very uncomfortable when Russia is too forward-leaning on the North Korea issue because the Chinese do see it as more of their sphere of influence to take the lead on and that Russia should be supporting more of a Chinese stance." So, the idea that Kim Jong-un went to Vladivostok and didn't go to Beijing first is deliberate, I'm sure, and, certainly, is a cause for concern in Beijing as to what is this changing dynamic. The professor said Kim Jong-un is becoming more confident and comfortable in the international space. She added, he has really engineered a process where he is an active negotiator as leader and negotiating with world leaders. He really has elevated his status. Following the historic summit in the Russian city of Vladivostok, Russian President Vladimir Putin was full of praise for the North Korean leader and welcomed his efforts to normalize its nuclear weapons program. Mr. Putin also pushed to progress bilateral relations with Pyongyang and seek a solution to the ongoing rift between North Korea and the U.S. The Russian leader said, "I'm sure your visit to Russia will also help to develop our bilateral relations and will help us to understand the ways we can help to settle the situation on the Korean Peninsula, what can be done together, what Russia can do to support the positive processes that are taking their place now. We welcome your efforts on developing inter-Korean dialogue and your efforts on normalizing the U.S.-North Korean relations. And of course, in terms of bilateral agenda, we need to achieve a lot to develop trade and economic ties and humanitarian ties." Kim, who had arrived in Vladivostok a day earlier on board his armored train, said the situation on the Korean Peninsula is an issue that the world is very interested in. He said he hoped for a very useful meeting in developing the relationship between the two countries, who have a long friendship and history, into a more stable and sound one. Mr. Kim said, "I would like to offer again sincere gratitude to Mr. President for making time in his busy schedule and come thousands of miles from the capital city of Moscow to here to give us time for a great conversation. We are visiting Russia this time to meet in person with President Putin and exchange our opinions. It is to exchange our mutual views on the Korean Peninsula and this region's political landscape, which is a great focus of the world's attention." The landmark summit comes just 2 months on from a second meeting between Chairman Kim and U.S. President Donald Trump. However, talks between the two nuclear superpowers in Hanoi broke down over disagreements over U.S. sanctions. Following the Hanoi summit, Russia's former North Korean ambassador Gleb Ivshintsev said Kim forced the head of the largest imperialist nation to negotiate with him as an equal.